I found out my father was suing me on a Tuesday, standing in a Kroger parking lot with a gallon of milk sweating in my hand. That's the hook. Now let me back up. My name is Rachel Robertson. I'm 29, and the man who's about to become the villain of this story is my father, Patrick Robertson. Remember that name. You're going to hate him by the end of this sentence, honestly. Because here's what he did. When I was 9 years old, standing in a courthouse hallway in Dayton, Ohio, the judge asked who wanted custody of me. My father looked at my mother. My mother looked at him. Nobody answered. My dad checked his watch. That's it. That's the whole scene. Nobody fought for me. Nobody even pretended. My Aunt Clara took me in because somebody had to. She wasn't rich. She worked at a dental office and drove a Corolla with 190,000 miles on it. And she never once made me feel like a leftover. She's the reason I turned out okay. My mother, Madeline, disappeared into a rotation of boyfriends and half-finished jobs. My father moved to Cincinnati, married a woman named Aya who already had 2 daughters, and built himself a brand new family like the first one never happened. I got a birthday text from him maybe every 3rd year, usually just happy birthday. I stopped waiting for either of them a long time ago. I built a life. Community college, then a state school, then a job doing accounts for a mid-sized logistics company. Nothing fancy. Mine. The lawsuit sat on my kitchen counter for 2 days before I could touch it again. I live in Columbus, about an hour and a half from where I grew up, in a 1-bedroom apartment I've had since I was 24. It's small. Nothing about it says girl who just inherited $1.4 million. I liked it that way. I liked that nobody looking at my life would guess. That stopped being true the moment my mother found out. Madeline called me 11 times in one day. I didn't answer any of them. On the 12th try, she left a voicemail, and I only listened to it because I was scared it might be an emergency. It wasn't. Her voice was syrupy, careful, like she was reading off a script she'd rehearsed in the mirror. Rachel, baby, I just heard the news. I'm so happy for you. Your grandfather always adored you. A pause. Listen, I know things have been complicated between us, but I'm really struggling right now. Just a little help would change everything. You know I'd do it for you. She wouldn't. She never had. But I saved the voicemail anyway. Something in my gut told me I'd need it. 2 days later, I agreed to meet her. Not because I wanted to, but because Aunt Clara said it might be smart to hear what she had to say before this got any bigger than it already was. We picked a coffee shop off Route 4, neutral ground, somewhere neither of us had history. She showed up in a black cardigan, looking smaller than I remembered, and I hated that my chest still did the thing it always did when I saw her, this stupid flicker of hope that maybe this time would be different. It wasn't. You look good, she said, sitting down across from me. Successful. Thanks. I'm proud of you. She reached for my hand. I didn't give it to her. I know we've had our issues, but you're my daughter. Blood is blood. Is that why you're here? Blood? Her smile flickered, just for a second, before she smoothed it back over. I'm here because I love you, and because things have been hard. Fabian and I were behind on rent. The car got repossessed last month. I'm not asking for the world, Rachel, just enough to breathe. I looked at her, really looked at her, and thought about the courthouse hallway, 9 years old, her looking at my father instead of me. Nobody raising a hand. You didn't want me then, I said quietly. Why do you want me now? Her face changed instantly. The softness dropped, like a mask coming off. That's not fair. I was young. I made mistakes. Are you really going to punish me for the rest of my life over one bad moment? It wasn't one moment. It was 18 years of nothing. She stood up so fast her chair scraped the floor. You know what? Forget it. Sit on your money. See if it keeps you warm at night. She grabbed her purse. Your father's right about you. You've gotten cold. She left me sitting there with 2 untouched coffees and a stranger's eyes on me from the next table. That night, my father's new family found their way into my phone. I'd never met my stepsisters in person. Lexi Henderson and Hallie Sanders, Aya's daughters, 16 and 19, had grown up in my father's house while I grew up in the hallway outside it. I knew their names the way you know trivia, nothing more. Lexi messaged me first, all warmth, all, "Hey sis, I know this is weird, but I've always wanted to know you." Then, 3 paragraphs in, the real reason surfaced. Tuition, a car she needed. How amazing it must feel to have all that money just sitting there. Hallie didn't bother with the warm-up. She went straight to Instagram, posted a video of herself pretending to cry, captioned, "When your rich stepsister won't even help with community college tuition, but got millions from a man she barely visited." It had 400 comments by morning. My name wasn't in the caption, but it didn't need to be. People filled it in themselves. I sat on my bed at 1 a.m. scrolling through strangers calling me selfish, greedy, cold, and thought about how none of these people had been there when I was 9 years old on that bench, swinging my legs, waiting for someone, anyone, to raise their hand for me. Now that I had something they wanted, suddenly everyone wanted to claim me. I turned my phone face down and tried to sleep. I didn't get far. At 6:40 the next morning, someone knocked on my apartment door. I wasn't expecting anyone. I hadn't ordered anything. I opened it in my pajamas, hair a mess, and found a man in a cheap gray suit holding a clipboard. "Rachel Robertson?" I nodded, already knowing. "You've been served." He handed me a second envelope, thicker than the first, and walked away before I could say a word. I stood in my doorway holding it, my hands not quite steady, and read the return address. It wasn't my father's lawyer this time. It was my mother's.
2 lawsuits. That's what I was holding by the end of that week. My father's claimed I'd manipulated my grandfather. Undue influence, they called it. Like I'd sat at his bedside whispering into his ear, instead of just visiting him twice a month, drinking his terrible coffee, and listening to him complain about the neighbor's dog. My mother's was different. Hers wasn't about the will at all. She was claiming I owed her financial support as her daughter, some old Ohio statute about filial responsibility that her lawyer had clearly dug out of a drawer nobody had opened in 30 years. Everyone told me it was a long shot, that no court actually enforced those anymore. It didn't matter. It still cost money to fight. It still meant sitting in a courtroom across from my own mother while she tried to convince a judge that I owed her my life because she'd given me one. I drove out to Springfield that weekend, to my grandfather's old house, the one that was legally mine now, but still smelled like him. Pipe tobacco, old paper, coffee grounds gone stale in the can under the sink that nobody had thrown out yet. I sat in his recliner, the leather cracked at the armrests, and didn't cry. I just sat there with my hands on my knees, trying to remember what his voice sounded like on the phone every birthday. Steady, a little gruff, never once forgetting. That's where Clara found me. She let herself in with the spare key she'd had since the funeral, and stood in the doorway for a second before she came and sat on the arm of the couch across from me. "You look like hell," she said. "Thanks. Your mother called me." I looked up. What did she say? Clara's jaw tightened, the way it used to when I was a kid and came home upset about something at school. She wanted me to talk you into settling. Said if you gave her $50,000, she'd drop it, and convince your father to drop his too. She shook her head slowly. I told her to lose my number. Something in my chest loosened, just slightly, hearing that. Clara had never once asked me for anything. Not when she took me in at 9 years old with nothing but a duffel bag and a court order. And not now, sitting on a dead man's couch with more money attached to my name than either of us had ever seen. I paid off her credit card once, I admitted quietly. Back before Grandpa died. $2,000. I didn't tell you because I knew what you'd say. What did she say when you did it? Thank you. Then a week later she asked when I could do it again. Clara didn't respond to that. She didn't have to. We both already knew the shape of it. That night I drove back to Columbus and met with my lawyer, a sharp, soft-spoken man named Billy Jordan, who worked out of a small office above a dry cleaner in Dayton, with a coffee maker older than I was, and a framed law degree slightly crooked on the wall. I handed him everything. The voicemail from my mother, the syrupy one where she called me baby for the first time in a decade, the GoFundMe I'd since stumbled across, titled, "Single Mother, 30 Years of Sacrifice, Abandoned by Her Own Child." Screenshots of my stepsister Hallie's video, the fake crying, the caption that didn't use my name but didn't need to, the messages from Lexi about tuition and how amazing it must feel. Billy read through the folder without saying much, flipping pages slowly, occasionally frowning. When he finished, he set it down and looked at me over his glasses. "You know what's interesting?" he said.
Your father's claiming undue influence. Your mother's claiming you owe her support under a filial statute nobody's used since Reagan was in office. Two completely different legal theories, filed 6 days apart, by two people who by your own account have barely spoken in 15 years. So either that's a coincidence, he said, or somebody's coordinating. I hadn't thought about it that way. I sat with it for a second, and it made my skin crawl in a way the lawsuits themselves hadn't managed to. Can you find out? I can try. It'll cost you, though. You sure you want to go down this road? I thought about the courthouse hallway, 9 years old, swinging my legs on that bench, waiting for either one of them to raise a hand. I'm sure. He brought in an investigator, a retired cop named Fabian, not my mother's boyfriend, a different Fabian entirely, which felt like a cruel joke the universe was playing on me just to see if I'd notice, who specialized in exactly this kind of thing. Financial records, phone records, patterns that don't show up until somebody goes looking for them. I signed whatever needed signing and went home to wait. I didn't wait long. 4 days later, Billy called me at 8 p.m. on a Thursday. His voice was different, careful, in a way it hadn't been before. Rachel, you need to sit down. I'm sitting. We found something in your father's phone records, subpoenaed as part of discovery for his case. There's a string of calls between him and your mother going back almost 2 months. Long ones, some over an hour. I felt my stomach drop somewhere near my knees. They haven't spoken in 15 years. Not since the divorce. Well, they have now, Billy said. And it gets worse. We also pulled some deleted messages off a cloud backup tied to your father's number. His provider keeps things longer than people think. I'm going to send you the file. I want you to read it when you're ready. Not right now. Not alone if you can help it. Just tell me, Billy. He was quiet for a second too long, the kind of pause that tells you the answer before the words do. They've been planning this together, Rachel. Before your grandfather was even in the ground. There's a message from your father to your mother, sent the day of the funeral. I'm going to read it to you exactly as it's written. Are you ready? Yes. She won't know what to do with that kind of money anyway. We split it. We're both set. Just need her to feel guilty enough to hand it over. I sat down on my kitchen floor with the phone against my ear and didn't say anything for a long time. Outside my window, somebody's car alarm was going off, and I remember focusing on that sound because it was easier than focusing on what I just heard. The two of them. The same two people who couldn't agree on custody of a 9-year-old for even 5 minutes, who had stood in silence in that courthouse hallway while a judge waited for either one of them to raise a hand, had finally found something they could agree on, 15 years too late, taking it from me. I didn't cry when I read the message myself. I thought I would. I sat on my kitchen floor for almost an hour with my phone in my lap, waiting for it to hit me the way things like that usually did. It didn't. What I felt instead was quiet, cold and quiet, like something had finally clicked into place. Billy wanted to file the messages as evidence right away. I asked him to wait. Why? He asked. This is exactly what we need. It proves coordination, bad faith. The whole thing falls apart once a judge sees this. I know, I said. I just want to do one thing first. I drove to Cincinnati the next morning. I hadn't been to my father's house in over a decade, not since I was 11, standing on the sidewalk outside his new place, with Aya's kids' bikes in the driveway, not invited in. I still remembered the address. Some things don't leave you no matter how hard you try to make them. He answered the door in a bathrobe, unshaven, and for a second, just a second, his face did something almost human. Surprise, maybe, or guilt. Rachel. I'm not staying, I said. I just wanted to see your face when I told you I have the messages. Both of them. The one to Mom about splitting it, the one about me not knowing what to do with the money. His face went through about 4 different expressions before it settled on anger, which I'd learned a long time ago was the one he was most comfortable wearing. You went through my phone records? That's illegal. It's called discovery, Dad. You're the one who sued me, remember? You started this. I did what any father would do. That money should stay in the family. I am the family, I said. I was the family the whole time. You just never noticed. He didn't have anything to say to that. For once in his life, my father was quiet. I'll see you in court, I told him,
and walked back to my car before he could find his voice again. That's when Lexi called. I almost didn't answer. I'd been avoiding both stepsisters since Hallie's video, but something made me pick up. "Please don't hang up," Lexi said immediately, her voice shaking. "I need to tell you something, and I don't have a lot of time. Mom doesn't know I'm calling." "I'm listening." "Dad's been telling us you're dangerous, that you manipulated Grandpa Walter, that you're the reason our family fell apart. He's been saying it for weeks, getting us ready to testify against you if it comes to that." She took a breath. "But I found some of his text to your mom on his laptop. I wasn't trying to snoop. I was just looking for a school form, and I saw your name and I got curious. Rachel, they've been planning this since before the funeral. I have screenshots." I gripped the steering wheel. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because Hallie's about to testify against you, and I don't think she knows what she's actually being used for. And because," her voice cracked, "because nobody ever explained to us why you weren't around. They just said you didn't want to be. I don't think that's true anymore."
"It was never true," I said quietly. There was a long pause. "Can I send you what I have?" "Yes." She sent it 20 minutes later, a folder of screenshots that lined up almost exactly with what Billy's investigator had already found, except these went further back. My father hadn't just started scheming after the funeral. He'd been talking to my mother since before my grandfather even got sick, feeling out whether the old man might change the will, testing whether Madeline would help manage me if the money ever came my way. I forwarded everything to Billy that night. He called back within the hour, and for the first time since this whole thing started, he sounded almost excited. "This is enormous, Rachel. Between the funeral text, the phone records, and now this, we're not just talking about dismissal anymore. We're talking about a counterclaim, fraud, bad faith litigation, possibly tortious interference, depending on how far back this planning actually goes." He paused. "Also, I have to ask, are you going to use the stepdaughter as a witness? Because if she's willing, that changes the entire complexion of this case." I thought about Lexi's voice cracking on the phone. 16 years old, caught in the middle of something she didn't build and didn't deserve. "Let me talk to her first," I said. "She's a kid. She's not a weapon." "Fair enough. But Rachel," he hesitated. "There's something else in the file she sent. I don't think you've gotten to it yet." "What is it?" "A message from your mother to your father from about 6 weeks ago. It's not about the money this time." He paused again, longer. "It's about you. Personally. I think you should read it before we talk about strategy, because I have a feeling it's going to change how you feel about all of this." "Just tell me what it says." "I'd rather you see it yourself," he said. "I'll send it now." The message came through as I was still sitting in my car outside my father's house, the engine off, my hand starting to shake before I'd even opened it. I clicked it open and read 4 words that made everything that had happened up to that point feel like the easy part.
4 words. Never should have had her. That's what my mother wrote to my father, 6 weeks before either of them filed a single piece of paperwork against me. Not about the money, not about the case. Just that. Sent like it was nothing. Like it was a fact she'd always known and was only now saying out loud to someone who'd finally agree with her. I sat in my car outside my father's house for a long time after I read it. Longer than I want to admit. I didn't cry. Not right away. I just kept reading those 4 words over and over, like if I stared at them long enough they'd rearrange themselves into something else. They didn't. I drove home in silence. No radio. I remember every red light on Route 4 that night, every one of them lasting a little too long. Clara came over when I called her, even though it was almost 11 at night. She read the message on my phone without saying anything, then set the phone down on my coffee table, face down, like she didn't want it in the room with us anymore. "You know that's not true," she said. "I know. Do you?" I didn't answer right away, and she didn't push. She just sat next to me on the couch until I was ready to talk, the same way she had when I was 9 years old and couldn't stop asking why nobody came for me. The court date came 3 weeks later. Billy filed everything. The funeral text, the phone records, Lexi's screenshots, the message about never wanting me. All of it. My father's lawyer tried to argue the messages were taken out of context. There is no context for those 4 words. The judge didn't buy it either. My mother's filial support case was dismissed first. Thrown out in under 10 minutes, the judge calling it without merit, in a tone that made her lawyer visibly flinch. My father's undue influence case took longer, but not by much. Billy laid out the timeline, the calls starting before the funeral, the planning, the coordinated pressure campaign, the GoFundMe funded by lies. By the time Lexi took the stand, voluntarily, and confirmed what she'd found on her father's laptop, there wasn't much left to argue. The judge dismissed the case with prejudice and encouraged my legal team to pursue damages. Billy did. We won a judgment against both of them for legal fees and damages tied to defamation. Neither of them could really pay it. That wasn't really the point anymore. My mother's GoFundMe got reported and taken down within a day of the ruling going public. Donors asked for refunds. A few threatened to sue her themselves. Last I heard, she'd moved in with a friend 2 towns over and stopped posting altogether. My father lost his job not long after. His company didn't love the local news coverage of a man suing his own daughter over an inheritance and losing badly. Aya left him within the year. I heard through Lexi that he's renting a room from a coworker now, still telling anyone who will listen that he was wronged. Lexi and I talk most weeks now. She's 17, applying to colleges, and I told her if she needs help with tuition, she doesn't have to ask twice, not because of guilt, but because she was the only one in that entire family who told me the truth when it cost her something. Hallie and I aren't close. Maybe someday. Not yet. I paid off Clara's mortgage the month after the ruling. Wired it quietly, no announcement, just a note that said thank you for raising me when nobody else would. She called me crying, and for the first time in a long time, neither of us was crying over something that hurt. The inheritance is still mostly untouched. I invested some. Fixed up my grandfather's old house instead of selling it. It felt wrong to let it go to strangers after everything. I go out there some weekends, sit in his recliner, and just breathe for a while. People ask me sometimes if I regret how far I took it. The investigator, the letters, the court case, all of it. I don't. Because here's the thing nobody tells you about being left behind as a kid. You spend years thinking if you just become successful enough, good enough, quiet enough, someone will finally decide you were worth keeping. And then one day you find out the truth was never about you at all. It was never something you could have fixed by being better. My mother wrote 4 words that told me everything I needed to know, and for the first time in 20 years, I believed her instead of doubting myself. Never should have had her. Okay. Understood. Then I won't spend the rest of my life waiting for people who already told me the answer. I have Clara. I have Lexi, in whatever shape that relationship becomes. I have a house that still smells like pipe tobacco on weekends, and a life I built entirely without them, brick by brick, long before any of this money existed. They left me behind twice. Once as a child, once as an adult who finally had something they wanted. I'm done being left. I'm the one who walked away this time, and I didn't look back. The end.